I felt like I was evolving as a person a little bit as a result of that. Like we said, Greg and I always had a good relationship. We always had a pretty healthy sex life, but all of a sudden everything felt to me like life felt like it kind of like it was on steroids.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only, or at least we try. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists and that you should consult the medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 64. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have an interview with Molly and Greg.
Yes, we do.
I'm excited.
I see. A couple of quick notes about this week's show before we get into the interview. The first one is, as we mentioned last week, we have a couple more episodes with goofy audio. This one is actually quite good. Other than like the first minute and a half, it got a little robot-y. Okay. And yeah, we just turned off our video and then it was perfect for the most part. So if you start listening, you're like, ugh. But then if you just give it a minute, it'll be fine. So we
did, however, just go back and shorten our little intro, so that's going to help out, right?
How'd you like that intro? All you people who skip over it, you only have to hit the next button twice now instead of like 5 times. Sorry about that.
We're learning.
All right, where are we going in 16 days-ish?
Yeah, we will be at Atlanta Poly Weekend, June 7th through the 9th.
In Atlanta.
Clever.
It's not clever. It's a fact. So we've got a little booth, a little table probably, and we're going to be giving away some free swag.
Yes, we have actually got samples from My One Condom and Uberlube.
Yeah, so we got some cool stuff to give away, and we will be doing that. And we'll also be mingling around, hanging out with the common folk. Yeah, I won't say that again.
No, that's not okay. We're definitely just
we're common people. Folk too. We don't even have special shirts. So,
okay, this is just going down.
We're going downhill. So let's see. There was something else we wanted to tell them about. Oh, a website. We learned about a new website when we were in Florida hanging out with the Sapphic Swingers a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, it's called freestdcheck.org.
So
it's part of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, and it is a free STD testing.
Yeah, so from what we're able to tell, looks like they're spread out across major U.S. cities, maybe about 20 or 30 cities across the U.S. And I went out and read some of the Google reviews about the different locations, but basically it sounds like you can go and get a full panel of STD testing. The waits might be long, but I mean, if it's free and you're there and that makes most sense, it's something that we wanted to put out there so people knew to check it out.
Yeah, it's definitely a resource that we hope people will try out.
If you don't happen to live near one of those, you can still get $10 off at stdcheck.com. That's not freestdcheck.org, but stdcheck.com. Last week, we told you a little bit about our story about using it for the first time, which was awesome. We'll tell you that story again, not today, but some other time. But we did want to put a call out there.
Yes. If you have recently, or actually any time, gotten STD or gotten tested for STDs and would like to share your story
if you've used our link, if you've used STD Check.
Yes.
That's what you're trying to say.
Yes.
We want to hear your experience.
Getting there.
I know, but they don't have all day. We shortened the intro, and now we've done this for like a month.
You're the one blabbering on.
True. If you've used the links and you loved it, or even if you didn't love it, we'd love to hear what you have to say about it. So go to the website, use the little button that says, leave us a voicemail.
Yes.
Leave us a voicemail, and let us tell other people about the awesomeness so more people get tested.
Right. Let us know how it works.
And if you use freestdcheck.org, also let us know how that is, because we would love to keep promoting that. That's a kick-ass resource.
Yes. As a quick reminder, you can find us on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com or nnmpodcast.com, and you can reach out to us on the contact page there.
And all the resources are on the resource page, and I will...
And all the episodes are on the episode page.
There's not an episode page. Maybe you should check out the website.
I know. I'm just being funny. Because that's not my role on this podcast.
I don't know if it's my role either. Anyway, my role is apparently to interrupt you, so I'm sorry.
Yes.
Next week, I won't interrupt you.
Okay, we need to get on to the interview.
Let's go. Well, I guess thank you both for taking some time out of your evening.
Yeah.
Sitting down with us. Greg and Molly. Yeah?
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
making sure we got the names right again.
Don't mess it
We've
up.
gone through some iterations, so we're arrived at Greg and Molly, so thank you.
No problem.
For anybody, including us, because we don't really know much about you at all, do you mind just sharing a little bit of background on who each of you is and where you're at?
And your relationship dynamic.
So Greg and I are both 44. We've been married for 19 years. We've been together for about 24. We have 2 kids together. We have been non-monogamous for about 2.5 years, getting close, I guess, to 3. Greg is a contractor, and I am currently a stay-at-home mom. I'm retired, not necessarily permanently, but I am taking a break from a stressful healthcare career that I had that spanned about 18, 19 years.
Yeah.
What else?
Our dynamic, we opened up, and right now I see myself more as polyamorous, and she sees herself more as open. We have a girlfriend, but it's my girlfriend, and it's a little complicated in that aspect.
Well, we share her.
Yeah.
For the most part.
So
We each have our own relationship with her as well.
yeah.
Very interesting. So, yeah, I guess how did you wind up coming to being one of you being poly, one of you being open, and
Well, I guess even back a little bit further, throughout your relationship, have you ever had discussions about non-monogamy or your relationship style?
No, we didn't. And now I say, so I'll answer kind of both questions from my perspective. Looking back over my history or my life at this point, I realized that I was likely always not a monogamous person. Greg was the first partner that I had that I didn't cheat on. And I really always just felt like that was because he was worth it. As far as my answer to leaning more towards open or non-monogamous than poly, I've been through different, ups and downs with that. And in June of last year, I had a very, very difficult breakup with a boyfriend. And at that time, I identified more as polyamorous, and that was a very deep relationship, and it was crushing for me when it ended. I really felt like I suffered from that, and I think I've pulled away from those type of deep emotional relationships as a result of that. So I can't say that I won't evolve into more of a poly dynamic with the right partner at the right time. But now for me, being open and having more, I guess, maybe casual relationships has been working for me. I don't want to imply that by casual, I mean, stranger sex or casual sex. My relationships, I just essentially lowered the expectations of an emotional connection. And I have regular partners, but those relationships are more, rooted in play than they are in deep emotional, amorous feelons.
Sure. And I'm curious. So it sounds like for the better part of 20 plus years, you were monogamous together, but you struggled with with being faithful before that. Were you the one, Molly, that brought it up originally to Greg about possibly opening it up? And I guess how did you two arrive there?
So yes, you're absolutely correct. And it was kind of interesting. It wasn't something that I necessarily could say that I struggled with so much as it was just sort of always like a nagging kind of thing in the back of my mind. I would have, I remember always having work crushes. I was always like, there was always someone at work who was like catching my eye that I would sort of like entertain fantasies, so to speak, that I just never acted on. And then in the summer of 2016, Greg and I were having a conversation about porn. And we were just talking about, I've been looking at this, looking at that. And he told me about a website that he was on, that he was enjoying some fun pictures, and there was an element of BDSM, and we always have been kinky together. We've always explored kinks and some fetishes and such in the bedroom. So he was having a great time on this website, which I ended up joining, and it turned out to be a social media website. So not too long after that, I was getting messages from people, and there was one that I responded to and ended up forming a somewhat of a connection to this person. So soon after that, I asked Greg how he felt about me having an online relationship. And he didn't necessarily even, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, I was like, sure. Yeah, it's online. He's in Kansas. What could happen? And boy, was I was wrong on that one for sure. I was very monogamous, and I'd never even thought of being non-monogamous. So when she said, could I have an online relationship? I was like, okay, this isn't going to go anywhere, but he was in an open relationship. So that sparked the interest for her in having an open relationship.
And that relationship, while it was online, ended up being a pretty deep and meaningful relationship. That's someone who's still very much a part of my life now, 2.5 years later. That, I guess it sparked some controversy in our marriage and a lot of discussion. And that person encouraged us. He was part of his local kink community, and he encouraged us to get out from behind the computer and go to munches in our area and meet people in the kink community, which we did. And it wasn't too long after that where we started just having further discussions. Like Greg said, I at that point had gained an interest in open marriage, and I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Yeah, well, she brought it up to me about opening the marriage, and I was like, nope, not happening. And it was like, no, but we opened it up very slowly, and it took months of discussions and talks and being honest, and it was hard for me. Like my mind was so messed up for a while, it was just really, really hard. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, whoa, I get to date other women, huh? That kind of sounds good. But then she gets to date other men. So it wrestled in my mind for a while.
Well, and then you met a very special girl who was willing to move slowly through these. So what we did essentially was we wrote a contract, and the contract started with, basically we could kiss, we could hold hands. There was very minimal sexual contact, and there was no actual sex, and it limited the number of dates that we could have a month. And the girl who Greg connected with was very patient, and she went through those steps with him, and eventually the contract slowly opened to where it included sex. And at this point now, about 2 years after we wrote that contract doesn't exist anymore, except in terms of some of the rules still, I guess, apply. But we did that to protect what we had. And we did because 19 years is a long time to be monogamous. And we've always had a very good, solid relationship that always felt very much like a lot to lose, like a lot to risk. And we didn't want to put our relationship in danger. So as those rules opened up, we would stop and evaluate, is adding in this rule how is this going to affect us as a couple? And I think what we found and what was so fascinating to us was that our primary relationship, the relationship between the two of us, just kept getting better.
Yeah, it
really
blossomed. It was amazing. It just, we had more sex, we had more talks. So the more we communicated, the better our relationship got. And even the tough communications was really helpful in growing our relationship. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I mean that's amazing to hear. I'm curious on your side, Greg. You said that you wrestled with it for a long time about like, oh, I get to experience other women, but then she's going to experience other men, and you went back and forth. Where was the tipping point for you that you were like, okay, yeah, no, let's go for it and see what we can make out of it?
I think I struggled at the beginning a lot because we were trying to do it online. I was trying to meet women online, and I'm not a good texter communicator. I'm more of a people person in face. And so I was struggling mightily. And Molly on Fetlife, she, instantly there's 30 messages in her inbox. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? But that's just how Fetlife is. So it took me a little while. And I remember one time I asked her, I go, could you just take a step back and wait for me to catch up to you? And she did. She was like, okay, I'm going to wait patient. And it was amazing of her to slow down going out or slow down all this stuff to wait for me. And I think the turning point was walking into the Munch for the first time and seeing the attention that I got from live people. And that's where I met my first girlfriend. So I think that was the tipping point. It was actually seeing the fruits of all this pay off a little bit and getting some attention and having possibilities for me.
Yeah. Do you think it was mostly like jealousy?
Yeah, I was jealous for sure. I remember the first time she said that she thought she was falling in love. I lost it. That was a long night. That was I don't even think I slept. So it was really, really tough for me, the feelings. But again, lots of hard conversations and open conversations and being honest with each other. Worked through those, and I realized that fear, it was just a fear-based. And our relationship was so good that I really didn't have anything to fear. So I think it was a little bit of jealousy and a little bit of fear was my biggest problems.
Yeah.
The day after that's what I really remember as the turning point. That night was, I guess in a way it was scary, I guess, for Greg to hear, that I'm attracted to someone else. And I had tried to convince him that wasn't going to detract from my attraction to him. But that was a hard argument, and I'll never forget the next day when we had lunch. We sat down at lunch together, and he said, I'm gonna let you have this relationship. And I always felt like it was a leap of faith. Greg took a leap of faith that day and said, I'm gonna let you do this, and I'm gonna see what happens. I'm scared, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I love you, and I can tell that this is what you want. And that at this point we had already started, I guess, to unlock, at least, if not open, Pandora's box. And I think he knew that at that point, turning back wasn't going to be healthy either.
Right.
I'm curious on your end, Molly. So, it's one thing to be the person who has their partner come to them and say, I'm falling in love with somebody else. But I imagine on your end too, it was a scary lead up in the weeks prior to that, like for you knowing that this was happening, that you had to broach this subject with your husband. And I guess, can you take us through that? Like how was that for you, and how did you come to that, and then having that conversation?
I guess what I remember and knowing what I know now and then looking backwards that was, I felt this overwhelming feeling that I had never felt before, that now I recognize as NRE, or new relationship energy. And that felt so good to me And I felt like I was evolving as a person a little bit as a result of that. Like we said, Greg and I always had a good relationship. We always had a pretty healthy sex life, but all of a sudden everything felt to me like life felt like it kind of, like it was on steroids. And I think that as much as I talked about the feelings, I think I demonstrated that it was healthy, that I was still giving Greg what he needed. I was still paying attention to him. I was still every bit as attracted. And there were times where I remember just feeling so overwhelmed with gratitude that he was letting me explore these things at all. I really felt like most humans, most men would say, absolutely not. Like, this isn't up for discussion. This is absolutely not going to happen. And so every tiny little thing that we would talk about, or every little step that we took, he was so open and so understanding. And sometimes there was a major backslide, like things would be really good for a couple days, and then all of a sudden something would maybe trigger him, and it was fear, which we didn't necessarily recognize then. But I didn't have a lot of trepidation. I was so excited that I think I just spilled that over onto him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And was there a point through this that either of you were like, okay, this isn't going to work. We need to just close it back up and go back to the way it was?
I think that I probably said that a couple times, that I wanted to just stop this. Like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Let's not do this. But I think, like she said, once she wanted that. And I think I kind of knew that there was no turning back to keep our relationship good. I just knew that there was no turning back, I guess is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to end it a couple times, but I just kept believing in what she was saying. And once I finally started feeling that NRE, like she said, and that's when I think the turning point was for me and us. And that's when we started to blossom with being non-monogamous. So yeah, there's been a few times. There's been a few big fights where there's been, yeah, let's end this. And then later we're like, no, let's not.
Well, and it was after 19 years, you're not used to dealing with rejection either. And that I remember as a little bit of a difficult thing on both of our ends, on both of our sides. I started to realize that, wow, rejection is really tough. But then it wasn't just another fear to overcome. But I remember there's one specific episode that comes to my mind where Greg felt rejected, and I think that made him say, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is hard, feeling this, I had this one play partner that I was so excited about, and I was, I felt all this NRE and everything felt great, and then all of a sudden she's going in a different direction, and that was just, it was devastating. But I think that in the way that, and then something else happened on my end. I don't remember what. And next thing you know, we're in this, World War II fight. But when the dust settled, I think we realized that we could overcome all those things. We could overcome the rejection. We could keep our relationship strong, and we could move forward together regardless of what happened with our other partners. They were just learning experiences, like a series of them.
And it sounds like it was a long process for you two to work through, but once you got to a place where you worked through a lot of that, I'm sure there's still bumps in the road, right? But it sounds like you have figured out what works best for your relationship.
Yes, for sure. We have. The first, I'd say 6 months to a year was tough. And then we started, getting rid of things on the contract and allowing us to play more and do more, and going to play parties with our other play partners and playing all together, and just the fun and the excitement, and our relationship, like our sex life, I think probably a year and a half into it was just through the charts. Like we just couldn't keep our hands off each other. And it seemed like that was fueled by all the NRE and the gratitude towards each other. And yes, there are still bumps in the road. We still have our little fights about things, but we it's really good now. I mean,
and I think we've learned a series of essentially their exercises that help us get through rough patches. One of them that comes to mind that we always fall back on is love is infinite, time and energy are not. And that's something we heard early on in our either kink or poly. I don't remember now which podcast we were listening to at the time that taught us that concept. And so we remind each other and we might remind ourselves. Greg can love his girlfriend or girlfriends depending on the situation, and I can love my girlfriends and boyfriends an infinite amount. There's no bucket of love where you're have to grab from one person to give it to another. Energy and time, though, are very different. And so we've gotten very protective of each other's time and our own time. And that's, I think, one of the things that we've learned to really manage is who's getting what time, where are we investing our time? And then we're very also protective of our own energy. If someone's getting too much negative energy from me, there's a problem. And I don't let that happen for very long before whatever is causing that negativity is eliminated. And that's been really helpful. I think that concept.
Yeah. One thing I was curious on that, and I think it's maybe something that's easy to conflate and something that I think maybe we would even struggle with is the idea that love is infinite and the time and energy are not, but that it's easy to see your partner spending more and more time with somebody and slip back into that mindset of, well, they're spending more time with them, they love them more than me. And I guess how do the two of you handle that, sort of that mentality of somebody's love for somebody else is better or stronger than it is for you, and working through those feelings?
I think what I've tried to do, because that has been a little bit of a struggle. So there's two different ways that I personally handle it. I've tried to own that, to own the concept that he can love anyone as much as he wants, and he can love me as much as he wants, and one's not going to take away from the other. And I remind myself of that. The time has been, I guess, historically my trigger. If I feel like someone's getting too much of Greg's time, or even too much of my time, to be honest, then we evaluate that. And what we've started doing is keeping a paper calendar, and we mark it with what we call poly days, and we count them at the end of the month, and we evaluate at the end of each month. We take a look and we say, okay, how many poly days were there? And we keep a little bit of a tally throughout the month, of course, to see, are we going in a direction to where we're not getting enough time together? So, and then we look at the poly time that we spent apart, where I'm with one partner and he's with another partner, the time that we spend together where maybe we're both with our girlfriend or we're with another couple. And it's actually like just a mathematical formula is what it's turned into that we use, because I've learned, especially for me, and I think for Greg as well, but I have to have a certain amount of what I call Greg days. I can't be without him if I haven't had enough of him. So we look at that when we're saying, okay, I want this day with this partner. How do you feel about that? And we evaluate it when either one of us are wanting to schedule a date.
Yeah, the poly calendar was her idea, and it works so great. I mean, it's all written down when we're doing this, how many times we get to do this. And we go to a lot of like BDSM play parties and munches. And usually my girlfriend will go with us to those play parties. So that sometimes can be, extra time for me per se, but we have to manage it is basically what we do. It works for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a cool strategy. I was curious, has that realization triggered for you to sort of the motivation to find and create new time and new activities with each other to try to build up and strengthen between you, so you have more energy then to put into your other relationships?
Yes, it has. We take time. Like, I like to do rope, so we'll schedule time for us to tie, an hour or so at night, and and that really helps when we have scheduled together time. Sorry, I was going.
No, I think that's those are really good close moments that we have when we take time to play in whatever way together. We also are lucky enough to have a very generous Greg's mom, or my mother-in-law, is very devoted to our son and to helping to be here when we're not. And she encourages us and helps to make sure we have a date night pretty much every week. We do something together, the two of us. So date night has become vitally important. We actually have done date night for probably a good 8 or 10 years before we opened our marriage. But date night is very important for us because we have that dedicated, devoted time where we can just really connect with each other. And then our playtime, which often involves rope. Sometimes we'll do some impact play or something else. I'm a pretty heavy masochist, and especially when I'm struggling with whatever I'm struggling with, whether it's another play partner or just being overwhelmed in my life or stress and anxiety, that play really helps to center and to help me get through that. I've said that it's like a big part of my mental health is that playtime that we have. But those moments are good. But we also find that sometimes we just need to actually be together doing nothing, just resting and relaxing and with no expectations, and just sort of being a family or being a couple that just spending time together without any pressure.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to ask too, you have this poly calendar, and I'm not sure if someone had suggested that to you or whatnot, but have you had the discussion with other partners to make sure that they're from their point of view, that your relationships with them are also getting enough time? Because I know that can be hard to balance. And like you said, that you two have a marriage, but you're also wanting to be fair to your other partners. How do you handle that?
Well, the calendar actually came into play after we've only been keeping track of that since August of last year, and that came after what turned out to be a difficult July. We overextended ourselves a little bit that month, and we ended up kind of giving away too much of our time. So we started that in August to prevent another rough month, and it's worked ever since. As far as making sure our partners get enough of us or get enough time, I'm going to answer first, and then I'll let Greg, because I think our answers might be a little bit different. I try to avoid with my partners, with the exception of our girlfriend, who I am probably of my partners the most, I would say, in love with. She's my girlfriend. She's also a girlfriend, who we do girly stuff together. We have our own date nights as well. And so I do try to make sure that she gets enough of my time, of Greg's time, and of our time together. Everyone else, I've tried to set very, very, very low expectations. I try to make sure that they know that they're not going to get a lot of my time. And I'm lucky enough that I have three male partners aside from Greg that I spend time with. They are all in committed primary relationships as well. So, and that's something that seems to have worked. The relationship that I had where the breakup was really tough on me was with a single partner. And I think that's a dynamic that doesn't work well for me. So I actually, in some of those relationships, feel like I have more time to give them than they have to give me at times, and vice versa. So I guess I have tried, and now I feel like I've been fairly successful at creating a dynamic with those partners where they don't need me. They're not dependent on me for emotional support or for a certain amount of time to feel important. They enjoy their time with me, and then we get together, we do our thing, and then we go our separate ways.
And I'm the total opposite. I have one committed relationship with a single girl, and it is a balancing act to give her enough time, but she is so understanding. Then she knows that, and I think really, truly, honestly, it all works because of open communication. Like, I tell everybody everything. There are no secrets. I don't hide anything, and I make sure that she knows I love her and I want to spend time with her, but sometimes we'll go 13 days without seeing each other. But then she does a lot of the same BDSM stuff as us. So I get to see her there, and I'll get 2 or 3 dates a month with her, and they're overnight. So it's a good extended amount of time, and we have a little bit of a distance drive between us. So that keeps it a little harder to see each other too. So it's a balancing act for sure. And communication truly helps me get through it. And I was not a good communicator before we started all this. And now I kind of over communicate sometimes, but it works for me. And she's an amazing person.
That's what I was going to say too. I mean, I think that you've done a really good job of setting appropriate expectations with her, but she has also done a really good job of not placing demands or not placing expectations that you can't meet. And what that's done is the two of them really have a fantastic relationship. And I think that's largely because her not placing those demands and her not placing expectations has made you want to give more. There's no resentment in that relationship. And so she's grateful for the time that she gets. If she feels like she's not getting enough time, she will share that, but it's never in a negative way. It's always in a way I think that feels positive and makes you just feel wanted and desired as opposed to inadequate. Or, I don't know.
That's true. That's perfectly said.
And to clarify, this is the same woman, correct?
Yes, I know. He says his girlfriend, and then we say our girlfriend.
I've been with her for 9 months now. Her name's Cat. Her name is Cavi. Cavi. Her nickname is Finn. But we've been together for 8 months, and I was actually didn't call myself polyamorous until I met her. I called myself open, and she was polyamorous. Molly was polyamorous, but when I found her, it just connected. So now I see myself as polyamorous and not open. And
well, I also wanted to mention that Cavi has been polyamorous herself for a long time. So and I guess as you could figure out from my other partners, it's not a closed triad. So Cavi is free to date other people as well. And she's actually taught us, I think, a good amount about poly and the different, she's well educated on poly, and she's identified as a single polyamorous woman for, I'm not sure the exact length of time, but I know it was for quite a while before she met us. So there wasn't that learning curve or that kind of weird jealousy thing that happens sometimes when single people try to do poly because they've met a partner who is poly, who they want to make that accommodation for. She didn't have that. She came open to the ideas and already with great understanding.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned that you are both seeing this girlfriend. Molly, on your end, is your bisexuality something that you've always known, or is that something that you've recently discovered through this relationship?
Oh, that's a good question. It's kind of, and it's a similar answer to the question on how long I've known I was not a monogamous person. I think it's always been there, and I actually identify as pansexual. While I haven't had relationships with non-binary humans, I have always had an attraction to gender fluid people, men in makeup, like not just binary. So I identify as pansexual, but it wasn't something that was ever at the forefront of my mind or that I really explored. When we first opened, I identified more as straight, but then there was a girl that I had a couple dates with. At the first munch that we went to, there was a girl who she just captured me. She caught my attention, and I just thought she was so beautiful. And I always found women beautiful. I remember that, like, always thinking they're just the female form was just so gorgeous. And she caught my attention, and she was actually the first date that I went on. But that didn't really. That was more, looking back now, kind of a friendly thing. And then there was a woman who I met probably about 6 months after we opened, who I just connected with on pretty much every level. I was just incredibly physically attracted to her, and she hadn't been bisexual for very long either. And so I just started exploring that. And I guess so now to shorten my answer, it's always been there, but I didn't always know it was.
Yeah.
Sure. And along those same lines, are there other things that either of you discovered about your sexuality, or things you're interested or not interested in that you discovered through this process of opening up and seeing what else was out there?
Yeah, for me, I always had, like, when I would watch porn secretly that Molly didn't know about, it was always about impact play and being beaten, and I would watch Dame stuff and different things like that. So I, in the beginning, played with a Dame, and it was in a non-sexual play, but she helped me explore my masochism. I thought maybe I was a little bit submissive, so I was very confused. And so I was playing with her, and she would treat me like a submissive. And probably about the fourth time I was at her house, she told me to do something. I was like, no. And she looked at me, and she's like, you're not allowed to do that. Do it. And after a few times, she's like, you're not submissive. You're a masochist. So I didn't really know what that meant, but I explored that and found out that I was a masochist, but I was also dominant. And that was really hard for me to wrap my head around, because at most of our play parties, you see the men who are getting beaten on. They're truly submissive men. So it was hard for me to figure that out. And once I did and became very okay with it, then I blossomed, and it was a lot of fun. And now I'm not really a masochist that much at all. I've kind of went away from that, what else have we like?
Well, real quick, do you mind elaborating on that, just for anybody who's not as familiar with the BDSM world and what that terminology means?
Masochism is someone who enjoys pain. Okay. I love processing pain. It's something about it. It's the I'm trying to forget the words.
I'll jump in and answer. For me, my masochism makes me feel powerful. Being able to take on the challenge of pain, process it, and then turn it into pleasure is it makes me feel powerful. It makes me feel like I can I can do anything. So I think that might be kind of part of it.
Exactly. I can take it, and I don't say a word. And I've had people tell me, oh my God, you're like one of the top 5 male masochists I've ever met. And I'm like, I just enjoy processing pain. So that's my masochism. Isn't sexually orientated. It's just about processing the pain.
Wow. That's intense. We appreciate the little dive into it, because that's not something that either of us really relate to, but it's fascinating.
No, and I'm sure a lot of other listeners can relate to it. So
yeah,
it's good
that's
to
awesome.
Put out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're very into our BDSM community. We spend a lot of time going to munches and play parties, and it's so much fun. We love it. And that's where, through the 2.5 years, I have found all my play partners from BDSM events. And I don't go looking online or dating sites or anything for play partners because I need that BDSM element in my secondaries.
Right. One thing I was curious about, we've had a couple that came on the show a while back that said that they used to be pretty involved in their kink community, and then when they told people in their kink community that they were non-monogamous or swingers, they were sort of ostracized. And I'm curious, in your community, and this is something that they touched on too. They said, well, we don't think it's that way everywhere, but it was something that happened to us. And I guess in your experience, is that something that, like, if you were playing and you found out that they were people you were with were swingers, or is that something you've struggled with too, like being polyamorous and in the BDSM community, or has it been pretty welcoming?
Yeah, not so much me, but Molly has been. A lot of the women in the slaves in the community kind of are afraid of her stealing their men. Like, it's not a lot of them, but that's been really the only pushback we've had, is that the jealousy of stay away from my man because you're polyamorous. But what they don't realize is we don't have sex with every single person we see. Like, just because we're polyamorous doesn't mean that we want to take your master away from you or your boyfriend or whoever you are. And that's probably been the only pushback that I see that we've went is with the women.
And sometimes I think it's a perception as opposed to reality, because there have been, and what Greg's speaking to is the I guess you could almost say old school. There's a phrase in the BDSM or kink community, the one true way. There's a lot of people who identify as master slave, where the slave has and often the master is the man and the slave is the woman, and she doesn't have the power in the relationship. She's given that up to her man. So if her man wants to play with someone else, she doesn't have a say in that. And so they can sometimes feel threatened. I identify as having a fairly low guilt threshold, so I'm not interested in playing with someone whose partner doesn't want me playing with them. That's something that I screen very, very carefully, and I think my partners who have supportive partners, like, so when my metamors are supportive of my relationship, it makes the relationship that much more meaningful and happy for me. And I think over the years, what Greg described, we've seen it happen, and we do sometimes. I can almost feel it instinctively with new people that we meet. But generally, I think that we've been around long enough at this point that people know I'm not really interested in. I'm definitely not interested in stealing anyone's man. I got my own man. I really can't do anything with yours if he wants to leave you. So that has diminished, but it has been an element that we've dealt with to a degree.
And plus, one of our rules that we have is we do not play with anybody who's a cheater. If you are not upfront with your partner, we will not do anything with you. So that's an important, that's the first thing I ask if I'm talking to somebody new is, does your partner know that you are talking to me? Like, do they know that you want to sleep with me or play with me, whatever it is? Because I don't do that at all.
Yeah, consent is key in our lifestyle, and the consent isn't just about not necessarily just about the two people who are playing, but the others in that relationship.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's all makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you elaborating on that. And I think Emma does too, because she was a little worried that you were going to steal me, but,
yeah.
But now she knows that's not your goal. So, if we can switch gears a little bit, I was curious on navigating polyamory with children. I know, when this is something that we don't have any experience with. We aren't polyamorous and we don't have kids. So how is it in terms of introducing new partners, and is there like a certain amount of time that you typically wait, or how do you two handle that?
Yeah, we don't bring casual people around, but Cabby we intermingle our families together. So she has a daughter that's 13. I have a son that's 15. My oldest son has moved out of the house, so he doesn't really matter, but he's met her too. But we do dinners together. We commingle our families. I don't want to hide it because I don't really see anything wrong with what we're doing. So, and it's just more people to love you, and they talk and everything. But like, I'll go to a soccer game of hers, and just stuff. We commingle everything. So
I think we've also tried to slowly normalize it for our children. It's a little bit more difficult for the older one.
Yeah, that was a fun conversation.
The young one has special needs, which includes limited outbound communication. So he isn't at school talking about mom's boyfriends, but we have slowly introduced him to, like Greg mentioned, Cabby. He's met a couple of my partners, but most of them who he's met, they've been introduced just as friends, and I'm not certain that he's knows any different. And if he does, like, for example, if someone spends the night when he's here, it's after a decent amount of time to where he's gotten used to seeing that person. And we've essentially normalized that. Our oldest son has not met any of my male partners, and he's only met Cabby. And that's not something that I think I would want. For his comfort level, I don't think he would want, after, having 19 years of me as his monogamous mother, to meet some of my male play partners. I think would be extremely uncomfortable for him. So someday in the future that could change, because I know he is aware, and I think he is gaining a comfort level with our lifestyle. But that's a little too much, I think, in his phase, where for our younger son, he's seeing the day-to-day because he's living here. So it's a little bit more comfortable or normalized for him.
Yeah, it was Sunday. He lives about an hour and a half drive from us. And we went to his house, and he's telling me about this bar he went to. And he's like, and Dad, it's a swingers bar too. I was like, oh, okay. All right. Like, it seems like he wants to talk to me about it, but I just let him lead with the conversations, because when I did, he was like, Dad, too much. Nope, that's too much. Stop. I'm done.
So he knows, but it's not something that you guys talk about on the regular. It's sort of
right.
Okay.
He knows, and he'll ask a couple little things, but yeah, I don't push it on him at all. So
yeah. Are you two out, I guess, to the rest of your family friends? Like, how is that come about as you've opened up your marriage?
It's funny. That's another one with a different answer for Greg and for me. We're not open to or out to my family. My family is mostly comprised of varying levels of devout Christians, and I don't have any shame, or I identify as a Christian as well. But this is the way that God created me, and my mother, for example, would try to fix me, and it would crush her. So she doesn't know. Greg's mom, on the other hand, actually babysits Cabby's dogs while we go to play parties at times. And she's very much aware of our relationship with Cabby. The first time she asked, she said, so where did she sleep? And the answer is, she slept in our bed. But she also has caught me, so to speak, through a timing mistake that I made with one of my male play partners. And Greg's mom is just one of the coolest people ever. She just rolled with it. So we're out to some of our friends, some of our family, but not all of them.
Yeah, and it was funny. My Cabby got me a shirt that said, I love my wife and we love our girlfriend. And so we went to rope practice and I put it on and not thinking, And I came home and I'm sitting there talking to my mom, and she's looking down at my shirt, looking up at me, looking down at my shirt, looking up at me. And she didn't say a word, but I knew she read it. And I was like, oh, all right, whatever.
Whoops. Well, I think we covered a lot of amazing ground. One thing that we love to talk about, if you're willing to, is how do the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of you keep yourself safe, and whether it's, I guess, just in general, how your sexual safety or being in the BDSM world, that's also something to consider.
Well, no, sexually, we test on the regular, and we demand that anybody we play with have a current STD test. If you don't want an STD test, then that's fine. We don't need to play. I test every 6 months, and we do it on intervals. So she tests every 6 months, and Cabby tests every 6 months, but they're all staggered. We wear protection with anybody who we're not fluid bonded with, which is basically everybody but Cabby right now. And and Jim, but
and Mike.
Yeah, but we pretty much testing, and that's. And at first, that was a really hard conversation for me to have with partners. That for some reason, it was just one of those awkward, like, will you take a test? But now I'm like, do you STD test? No? Okay, well, if you don't want to go, it takes 10 minutes, and, it's...
So to answer the question, we have the awkward conversations with all of our partners, whether we intend to fluid bond or not. And if we do make the decision to fluid bond with a partner, it's something that we both agree on, and we have conversations where we review the risk and analyze it and say, and that's assuming that the partner wants to fluid bond. I've had at least two partners in the last year who both have just not wanted that, and that was fine. I still expect somewhat recent testing from them because condoms aren't 100% reliable. So, and I just, from a education and comfort standpoint, I think testing is good whether you're fluid bonded or not.
Yeah, and do you also have the question, like, let's say you're talking about fluid bonding with a new partner, do you then have the conversation with all of your other partners that you're fluid bonded with?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody knows that if I'm fluid bonding with somebody, I will tell everybody else. So we have to be open to be safe. And Cabby has to have the conversations with anybody she is going to play with, whether she fluid bonds or not. And she knows that she's expected to have them have recent tests too. I mean, she's turned down people because they won't test. So it's a horrible, not horrible, it's an awkward conversation, but we all have to be safe.
Well, another way that I want to answer the question is because we are part of a community, we're part of the kink community, we have individual and collective reputations to protect. So in the community, it doesn't matter, how much money you make, where you come from, your reputation or your name are really all you have in that community. And if you go around, being unsafe and spread something as a result of that, your reputation is at stake. And especially I think for, a guy who doesn't always, men in general don't always find the same level of acceptance. I don't think that women do. It's very, very important to protect that.
Yeah, I guard my name very in the community very carefully. Yeah, I don't want to ever ruin my name. And so, especially our community is so small too. If you do something in, an hour north, people hear about it 2 hours south, and there's not all these little communities you can go to. It's just, if you screw up once, you can really ruin your name. So another
way Greg has kept us safe is he's forbidden me from Tinder dating. I'm not allowed to date because if you go with people who maybe are even more open than we are, then they pass something along, then they can just disappear on you without any repercussions. Where, like we said, in the community, there are repercussions because your reputation is at stake. But yeah, not to say that I had any interest in Tinder dating, but that was something he said early on. This isn't going to happen. You're not going to do the hookup thing.
No hookups.
Right. Well, and I think the social pressure is good, and it's also just you don't want to harm anybody, right? And you don't want to harm yourselves, right. And I think it was a good point, too, that you brought up, that it doesn't matter how rich and powerful you are, you're not invincible. And so thinking, well, I'm a elite status type person, well, you're just as susceptible as anybody else. So I think that's a good point.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything that we may have missed that you two wanted to chime in with?
Just that it's really, our relationship is so much stronger now than it was before we opened. And we've always had a good relationship, but the love that I feel from her and the love that I give to her, I think I work harder now that we're open than I did when we were monogamous. Monogamy is kind of easy. I mean, you know that she's coming home, I'm coming home, and everybody's just doing their thing. But when somebody else is taking your wife out for dinner, you kind of, I got to step my game up a little bit. I think it keeps me on my toes. It's like, I don't know. I think it really helps me just keep on my toes and keep her happy and make sure she knows I love her.
I think that's a great, tidbit too. Yeah. Because you don't often think about that, but yeah, you're kind of not competing, but you want to keep up with.
Got to keep your tools sharp.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, another thing we do is we try and have what we call reconnection days. So we try and do a lot of our dating on the same evenings. And so when somebody's not home alone or somebody's not getting more dates, I mean, poly's never equal. Like, we've never had it to where we're both equal and we're both having fun at the same time. Sometimes hers is better than mine. Sometimes mine's better than hers. But when one of us comes back the next evening, we really, really, really try, and we call them reconnection days, and make sure we do something with each other where we reconnect and show our love to each other. And that's something I think that has helped us through our journey a lot too, is just having those days to show our love.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great tip, and something that I think even monogamous people could take a cue from.
Yeah, exactly.
And another thing I just thought of was one of the things that we decided, I think it was almost inadvertently early on, was that we were going to try to find a reason to say yes rather than a reason to say no. So if one of us wanted something and our instinct was to say, no, I don't want you to have that thing, we would take a step back and look at it and say, well, why don't I want him to have that thing? How is that going to harm me or our primary relationship? And so we work to try and always say yes. And, we've heard of other contracts where certain things were maybe restricted. Gifts was an example. And, we talked about that. Are we going to allow secondaries to give us gifts? And we decided that there was no harm in that. I'm not going to leave him because someone bought me something fancy, and vice versa. So I'll never forget this. The first gift that either one of us got was a box of chocolate chip cookies from his girlfriend. And I remember thinking how special of a gift that was, and that how poorly I would have felt if we said no gifts, and therefore he couldn't have that little token of love and appreciation that I thought was so sweet of her to do. And I call Greg Daddy, and he calls me baby girl. We have a dynamic there that we share. And there was another man who I had a dynamic where I wanted to call him daddy as well. And I remember very nervously asking Greg how he felt about that. Are you going to be okay with with me calling another man daddy? And he took some time and careful consideration and decided that he couldn't come up with a reason why that was going to be a problem. And I remember that's another one of those special moments that I remember is the look on that man's face when I said, yes, I am allowed to call you daddy. Those special moments, because we work to say yes instead of just saying no, or, deciding that our own, putting our own fears or jealousies first, instead of the, feelings of each other or secondaries, really is something that I've taken a lot of pride in. And I'm really happy that we did.
Can I compound on that too?
Sure.
I always, we say we always want to try and say yes. And sometimes I would say yes when I should have said no. And so I have learned through the last couple of years that I won't say yes or no right away. I will take some time and think about it. If it's a day, if it's an hour, if it's 2 days, however long it takes me to analyze the situation, because I have said yes a couple times just to try and be that good partner, that yeah, I got your back. Good game and giving, as some people say. But I've learned that I need to take my time and actually think it through and make sure that me wanting to say yes is the right thing for me. And so that's been a huge for me, because I'm always the yes for everything. Oh, yes, I can do it. I can do this. I can do that for you. Sometimes to a detriment. I'm very helpful for anybody who will ask me, will you help me roof my house? Yes. But you don't have time. So that's just who I am. So that was a good thing for me to learn.
Right. And we learned that the hard way, because you did a couple times. He would say, yeah, go ahead and do that. And then whatever it was that I had asked permission for and then been granted had such a negative effect on him that it had a negative effect on the relationship, and it negated any of the good that I was trying to get out of whatever it was I was asking for. So, and I think there have been a couple times where it's been that way for me too. I've said yes, and then I thought, well, why did I say yes to that? I'm not going to be okay with that. And then we're both going to suffer for it.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point to bring up, because that's something that I try to live by with life too, is life in general, saying yes to as many things as I can, but not saying yes until you're sure it's a yes. And even if it's a little scary, but thinking through it all, but it just keeps, I think that mindset tends to keep you more positive too. So thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
The other, I guess, kind of last question, I think, moving forward, do either of you two see a future where you might go back to a monogamous relationship, or do you think you will continue down this route and don't see an end in sight?
Or do you see the strategy, the dynamic shifting in any way?
Well, the first question is no, I don't see us ever being monogamous. I don't see me ever, as much as I did not want to be non-monogamous, I can't see myself monogamous again ever. I think she feels the same way. And the dynamics, it's fluid. Like she said, if she meets somebody that she falls in love with, then maybe she'll call herself polyamory. If the cabbie girl hurts me and I turn just open and I don't want relationships anymore, I just want to play. And so I see that being fluid, but I never see myself being monogamous again, because it's too rewarding and too so much love. I feel every day. I feel love from all different angles, and it's an amazing feeling.
And I think also in terms of the fluid dynamic, or non-monogamous, polyamorous, open, that one of the things that I've kind of learned along the way is I used to put people in boxes, so to speak. I wanted to find a sadistic daddy that would offer me a certain type of dynamic, or I wanted to find someone who would check off these boxes, and I found myself often disappointed. So I've learned to just, when the people that I meet and connect with well, that I want to explore with, I try to keep my mind as open to whatever possibilities that relationship can offer me, and just see where it goes. So if that shifts me as a person a little bit, as long as I still feel like things are good and things are healthy, I stay open to any and all possibilities.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And thank you both for sharing everything with us tonight. I appreciate it, and well, we appreciate it. And
I appreciate it too.
Wonderful to get to know both of you some more.
Yeah, and
well, thank you. Yeah, we love talking about this stuff. We really do. We're like poly geeks.
Oh yeah. Well, real quick, one last thing I forgot to say.
Sure.
We actually had a lady who does munches a couple hours north of us kind of hear about us and ask us to do a poly discussion group at her munch. So I am terrified of talking in front of people. I can do this all day long, but talking in front of people. But we did a 2 hour discussion group on polyamory at a munch and got questions thrown at us. And it was actually very rewarding for me because it crossed the fear off of talking in front of people. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And we had so much positive feedback from our talk that it was just really, really good for us.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. And I think you'll find too that this is rewarding, right? I mean, putting this out there, and we'll get feedback, and we'll share that feedback with you as it comes in, because we inevitably get feedback on every episode that it's helped somebody. And I think that's the amazing thing about doing this and getting as many stories out there as we can, because there's always going to be somebody who relates to something that you said, and that's powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess on that note, if you are someone that's listening and you can relate to this, let us know, because it really means a lot, and it means a lot to the people that, like you two, who volunteer to come on the show and share their stories. So just hopefully just keep spreading the word.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I reached out to you guys, because I came across. I think I heard you guys on a podcast. So I switched over to your podcast and I started listening to it. And the thing I loved about your podcast over all the other ones was that they were just everyday people. Normal people. It wasn't sex educators all the time. It wasn't this professional dame or this or that. It was, I listen to a lot of kink podcasts, by the way. I loved yours because it was just everyday normal people who were open and listening to their problems and their positives and all their different things about non-monogamy. I've gotten hooked on it. So I just listened to every one of them.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you for that. And we appreciate it. And that's a call out to all the normal people out there to reach out to us.
Yeah, you'll probably get asked to come on the show.
And in the meantime, we will let you get back to your evening, and we will get back to ours, and we will invite you to come on the show again, absolutely, in the future, because I think we got a lot out of this, and we look forward to keeping in touch. So thank you again.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Well, have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Yeah.
All right, funny one. What do you got to say? I'm not interrupting you one bit. I'm not speaking the rest of the outro.
Yes, you will. I know you. I'm waiting for it. Well, thanks to Molly and Greg. We had an awesome time chatting with them, and it's really appreciate that they reached out and talked to us. Nothing?
I'm not interrupting.
You're not? That wasn't interrupting.
Yeah, thank you to them. And we do have an episode next week. We'll tell you about that in T-1 minute or less.
I was going to say less than that.
We wanted to first recommend, if you're looking to meet other open-minded people, open relationship people, check out the new app, #open.
We interviewed the founders of the app, #open, on episode 53. Go back and check that out and download their app.
Yes, do that. Next week, we have a very serious interview with a couple from next door.
Yes, Jay and Kay from the podcast That Couple Next Door.
Yeah, I was going to say you're supposed to correct me and say they are that couple next door. I thought you were the funny one.
I wanted to get their names in there.
So
we're not on.
This is good. We're doing really good here. Really nailing it. So
I am the funny one, by the way. I'm also the sweet one and the nice one and the compassionate one.
If you're still listening, if you're still a subscriber to the show after this week, check that out next week. It's a fun interview. We get some cool insights. We even hear about the big sarong brawl.
Yes.
So that's exciting. So yeah, come back, listen to us in a week, and we will see you then.
Bye, everyone.